I'm really pleased to speak with Ian, who is otherwise known as PoshScotch on Instagram this evening. Ian, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks, David. Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. I think you're one of the first accounts I followed on Instagram. I saw all your amazing whiskies that you have, a constant supply of bottles seemingly arriving with you, and also some lovely photographs. And I think sort of perhaps last March or April, I think we might have messaged and said let's go out and do a photo shoot one day with some of these nice whiskies around London. That day's never come. I've not been back to London since then, so hopefully we can do that in the future. But let's just start because I really want to sort of delve behind the people running the Instagram accounts. What was your first experience, your first memory of whiskey?
My first memory of whiskey. There's probably a good memory and a bad memory. Bad memory, I think, was at a school party when I would have been 17, I think, kind of going back to a friend's house after we already had far too much to drink, and stealing some of his dad's famous grouse that was sat there. And then I was really ill the next morning. I didn't touch whiskey again for a while, throughout uni and first couple of years at work. And whiskey then, I think, kind of probably came back on my radar actually after I was doing some work on a bid for what was then the newly created Police Scotland, and I was going back and forth between London and Glasgow. And you couldn't help but see all the bottles of whiskey up at the airport in Glasgow. But actually then winning the bid, one of the senior managers bought a couple of bottles of whiskey and kind of treated us to a few drams. And it was the first time I'd probably had whiskey in 7 or 8 years at that point. And I liked it. And it was good. But even then I didn't kind of buy a bottle for a while. It was actually whilst we were expecting my daughter. I kind of realized, the time for kind of lots of nights out and anything else is probably over, and now's the time to start drinking better rather than just drinking whatever's available at the bar. And I bought myself a bottle of Highland Park 12 and found myself on an extremely slippery and expensive slope.
Absolutely. So you Highland Park 12, readily available in the supermarkets. What was your first, should we call it a serious bottle of whiskey that you purchased?
A serious bottle of whiskey, interesting. I kind of I started buying quite a lot of samples quite quickly, kind of from places like Master of Malt, and as I said, quite quickly delving into other things. And I've got a younger sister who's much younger than me. She's actually finishing off university at St Andrews at the minute. And I went up and visited some distilleries for the first time, kind of visiting her a few years ago. And I'd already become quite a fan of Glendronach by that point in time. And so probably maybe my first serious bottle is they had a handfill cask, a 12-year-old single cask that was available. Tried that as part of the tasting and the tour there, and bought a bottle of that, which was, it was about £100 at the time. But yeah, it's probably my first single cask. A fantastic whiskey, and that only hastened the slide into buying kind of bigger and better bottles all the time. And I've got I think about 30 single casks of Glendronach in at the last count.
And it's very similar. I actually got one, right there, the 2004, which actually was my very first serious purchase, which I got from Hedonism in Berkeley Square. A few years ago now, and yeah, absolutely. And fortunately, it's double or triple in value. So a wise investment. I sort of tend to have my drinking whiskies in my pension whiskies, so I like to balance them out. I'm going to ask you a question testing your memory. Do you remember what your first Instagram post, what that was of, what whiskey it was of?
Oh, I think it was at the time my account was still a personal account, or I barely used it. I'm pretty sure it was New Year's. It was must be New Year's Eve,
Yeah.
2018, and there was a Glenfarclas,
Yeah.
and I think there was something else as well. I can't remember what the other bottle was in the picture.
It was a Balvenie single barrel 15.
Ah, yeah, there we go.
I'm very, very impressed. That's very good memory skills. Brilliant. And obviously those bottles are long gone now, I'd imagine.
They are indeed, yeah. Both, yeah, both good drams, and yeah, I think quite a few of them. The fill level, I think, probably ended up being fairly well consumed over that evening. I've got a few of my oldest friends from school and university have got into whiskey now as well. So certainly looking to catch up with some of those guys over a good dram or two once we're able to again.
And you have an opportunity with those friends to actually share the purchase price of some rarer bottles?
Not so much with those guys. I think as time's gone on and I've got more and more into it, both in terms of Instagram and everything else, some of my purchasing decisions and the prices have started to go up. But luckily, whilst those guys wouldn't necessarily want to split a kind of 200-300 or more bottle, I'm lucky enough to be part of the London Whisky Club, where there's always people who are willing and able to go in on some more kind of obscure or expensive bottle splits.
And are all your bottles for for enjoying, or do you collect any as well?
I think I probably rarely buy with the intention of collecting, but I definitely buy faster than I can drink, especially when there's the samples and other things coming through from tastings. So I probably never intended to have kind of, as I said, 30 odd single casks of Glendronach plus a few other releases as well. So there must be 40 or so bottles hanging around at the minute. But there are two 20-plus-year-old single casks open at the minute. There's a Benriach 35 open at the minute, so I don't shy away from opening some of the more expensive bottles at the same time. So yeah, more of an accidental collector, I think, rather than anything else.
But fantastic! It's great. You're in a position where you can actually drink them and enjoy them as they're intended. Yes, I absolutely love that, as I'm sure everyone else does. Do you know how many bottles you've actually got in your collection? Have you or do you dare not think about that?
I was just doing an audit a little while ago, actually, and I think it's probably around about 100 at the minute. And to be honest, I kind of it's at the point where shelf space is starting to become a bit of a premium. There's shelf space for maybe kind of 110, 120. So it does come to the point sometimes where I kind of realize that is rapidly approaching, and then kind of look to see where there are a few kind of friends or club members that are interested, and I do occasionally send the odd bottle off here and there to auction as well if I kind of realize I bought that. FOMO is a terrible thing, and sometimes you buy things and you go, why did I buy that? And yeah, again, when stuff's getting sent off to auction, it's not necessarily to make money out of it. And certainly I've bought stuff and sold stuff and lost plenty of money on whiskey as well. It's not always an investment that goes up, and I tend, again, not to treat it as an investment. Yeah, it's around about 100 bottles at the minute, which is still a lot.
Yeah, but I noticed on your Instagram you've had a lot of unboxings recently from the March auction, Scotch Whisky auction, Scotch Whisky auctions. What is your strategy? Because they had something like 6,500 lots. Just to go through them all takes a lot of time. Are you targeting particular distilleries or ages, or is it just completely random?
So I guess I look at what I'm interested in tasting, and also kind of what I'm potentially planning for the account as well. So, the three distilleries that I kind of tend to look at first will be Glendronach, Bunnahabhain, and Talisker. They're probably my three favorite distilleries. It's the they're the bottles that I kind of tend to either collect or buy the most. I often find that older blends and also blended malt in particular is highly underrated. So I kind of tend also to look out for kind of older bottles of blends, especially as back in the 70s and 80s, they often used to be bottled at a higher strength as well. I mean, 43 was fairly standard, whereas now it's often 40. So I tend, I guess, to have a little bit of a strategy, and then, as I said, it's whatever else that I'm potentially planning for the account. I realize I've built up a little collection of 30-year-old whiskey recently, so I'm planning on. I think I need probably maybe one bottle, and then what people who are regulars on my account may have seen is I do what's called a featured week, and I have 6 or 7 posts and a summary of what hopefully are generally reviews of a series. So yeah, one more bottle I'll have enough for a week of 30-year-olds.
Yeah. And have the distillers actually noticed you as a buyer and a consumer?
Some have, and some haven't. I mean, certainly brands have asked to work with me, which is fantastic, and something that I never expected to happen when I went into this and kind of decided to start sharing my hobby. And it's not necessarily all the brands that are the ones I'm buying most. I'm a big fan of Billy Walker, and Glenallachie is rapidly rising up there, and I think could easily take one of those kind of top three slots at a point in time. And it's been fantastic that I've been able to do a little bit of work with them at the back end of last year, and I'd love to do more with them as well. I mean, Billy's a fantastic person, and obviously knows his stuff, and his cask management is probably second to none out there. And it's an honor that they would consider kind of sending me anything to kind of hear my thoughts on it, really.
And of course, I think whiskey is very much about it's a people drink as well. It evokes passion, and I think that when you get to distilleries as well, the way you will be looked after, shall we say, the experiences you will have will be absolutely unbelievable. I know from my sort of previous career as a wine merchant, wine writer, I had some amazing experiences, with the winemakers, and hopefully with the distillers as well. How often do you actually get to Scotland?
Not at all in the last 12 months. I've got a tentative trip booked for May, but I'm not sure whether it might come kind of slightly too early for restrictions to be lifted, so it might need to be rescheduled for later in the year. I think for me, a lot of my kind of passion has accelerated rapidly over the last kind of 6 or 7 years. So I was lucky enough to get up in at least once per year over the last kind of 3 years before COVID hit. 2019 had a couple of different special experiences. I went to Fèis on Islay for the first time, and also had a fantastic trip up to Glendronach as well, as part of a Facebook group, which was amazing. I'd met Rachel Barry. We had a personal tour from her around the distillery and the grounds. A monumental single cask tasting, and a fantastic dinner with some paired whiskies, including a pre-release of I think what became the traditionally peated. So an unbelievable experience. And you're right. I mean, I think going to a distillery, having the tour is part of the magic, isn't it? And it's I think it really helps kind of tie you to that distillery, and for that reason, Skye is on the list for May if I am able to get up there as one of the few kind of one of my top distilleries in Talisker that I've obviously not had the chance to visit previously.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm supposed to be doing the North Coast 500 driving route in June, which is postponed from last year. which actually from 5 days from down here in Kent. I'm actually going to stay up there, I think, a little bit longer. We go past a couple of distilleries, Wolfburn being one of them actually on the route. And I think I should go back to Glasgow, wherever we're finishing Edinburgh, and then head back north again. And do some more tastings, because it's just too good an opportunity while you're there not to in time allows. So I mean, I was going to ask you what perhaps one of your most memorable whiskey experiences might have been, but it sounds like the visit to Glendronach might have been it.
Absolutely. I mean, that was a fantastic experience. But I've been lucky enough to have so many. I mean, my first trip to Bunnahabhain was a bit almost kind of accidental. I mean, obviously I was there on the island anyway as part of Fèis, but I wasn't there for the entire week. I got, I think, 4 or 5 nights on the island, so a decent chunk of time still, and there for most of the open days, but not for Bunners. And I actually went there on the Saturday on Bruichladdich Day, and it was people say, oh, Isla's get so busy on Fèis. That's a lie. It doesn't. Like, if you're used to London or traffic in the southeast, it's hilariously quiet everywhere apart from the car parks and the distilleries around. The one place that's having its open day on that day. And I was treated like a king there by the guys in the shop. Tasted 6 or 7 different whiskies, came away with a huge number of bottles and single cast from Warehouse 9, having never previously been a massive fan. As I said, since then, over the last kind of 2 and a bit years, Bunner's shot up there to number 2 for me, and it's been fantastic. And I had an amazing tasting as part of the Whiskey Club with Billy Sinclair and David Brody, who are 2 of the kind of key staff members up on the island over there just on Wednesday. And we were treated to some absolutely amazing whiskies there. And it was so good to see, we had nearly 70 club members on the call. So just fantastic to be able to share the Bunner love.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a Warehouse 9. It appears quite regularly in your post, isn't it? It's becoming a firm favourite of yours. Ian, thank you very, very much. It's been absolutely wonderful chatting to you. I'm going to put your Instagram PoshScotch just down here for everyone to see, and please do like, and please comment on what your favourite whiskey is below here. If you're a fan of any of the whiskies we've talked about this evening, absolutely love to hear about it. And please do subscribe to the channel. Ian, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure. Thank you.